David Miller checked his watch as he hurried through the hospital parking garage. He was running late again for his night shift at City General Hospital. His daughter Emma had taken longer than usual to fall asleep, asking him to read one more story about brave knights and kind princesses. How could he say no to those big brown eyes that reminded him so much of her mother? The elevator ride to the 4th floor gave David a moment to collect himself. He straightened his blue scrubs and took a deep breath. Working nights was hard, but it was the only way he could afford daycare for Emma during the day and still make enough money to support them both. His neighbor Mrs. Peterson was kind enough to watch Emma overnight for a small fee, but David always worried about leaving his 8-year-old daughter. The emergency department buzzed with its usual chaos when David arrived. Ambulances lined up outside, their red and blue lights flashing through the windows. The waiting room was packed with people holding ice packs, crying babies, and worried family members pacing back and forth. "You're 15 minutes late," said Nurse Jennifer as David quickly put on his ID badge. "Dr. Williams is asking for you. We have 3 car accident victims coming in, and the trauma rooms are full." David nodded and grabbed his stethoscope. He had been working at City General for 5 years, ever since Emma was 3 years old. The job was demanding, but he loved helping people during their worst moments. It reminded him of why he became a nurse in the first place. The night passed quickly. David moved from room to room, checking vital signs, giving medications, and comforting frightened patients. He assisted doctors with procedures, cleaned wounds, and held the hands of scared children while their parents filled out paperwork. This was what he was meant to do. Around 2 in the morning, the emergency department finally started to slow down. David was updating patient charts when the automatic doors burst open. A security guard walked in, supporting a thin woman with long gray hair. Her clothes were dirty and torn, and she clutched her left arm against her chest. "Found her outside the main entrance," the guard told the receptionist. "She says her arm is hurt, but she doesn't have any identification or insurance cards." David looked up from his computer. The woman appeared to be in her 60s, with kind eyes that seemed lost and confused. Blood seeped through her fingers where she held her arm. She swayed slightly, as if she might fall over at any moment. "Please," the woman said softly. "It hurts so much. I don't know how it happened." The receptionist barely looked up from her screen. "You need to fill out these forms first. Do you have insurance? A social security card? Any form of identification?" The woman shook her head. "I don't have anything. I just need someone to look at my arm." David watched as Dr. Richards examined the woman quickly. The doctor's face showed no emotion as he lifted the woman's hand to see the wound. David could see a deep gash running from her wrist to her elbow. It needed stitches immediately. "This isn't life-threatening," Dr. Richards announced. "We're too busy tonight for non-emergency cases. She needs to go to the free clinic downtown. They open at 8 in the morning." "But doctor," David stepped forward. "She's bleeding pretty badly. That wound is deep." Dr. Richards gave David a cold stare. "We have paying customers with real emergencies. She can wait 6 hours." The security guard was already moving toward the woman. "Come on, lady. You heard the doctor. You need to leave." David felt his heart racing. 6 hours was too long for a wound like that. The woman could get a serious infection, or worse. She might not even make it to the free clinic if she passed out from blood loss. "Wait," David called out, but the security guard was already escorting the woman toward the exit. David thought about Emma sleeping safely in her bed. He thought about his steady paycheck that paid for their small apartment, Emma's school supplies, and her ballet lessons. He thought about the rules he was supposed to follow and the job he needed to keep. But he also thought about why he became a nurse. He thought about the oath he took to help people who were suffering. He thought about what he would want someone to do if Emma was hurt and needed help. The woman stumbled as she walked toward the door. David made his decision. Rosa, David called out, reading the name on a bracelet around the woman's wrist. Let me take a look at that arm. The security guard stopped. She was told to leave. Just give me 2 minutes, David said firmly. I want to clean the wound properly before she goes. David gently guided Rosa to a small supply closet near the back of the emergency department. He grabbed gauze, antiseptic, and suture supplies from the cabinet. His hands worked quickly and carefully as he cleaned Rosa's wound. What's your full name? David asked gently as he worked. Rosa Martinez, she replied. I think. Sometimes I forget things. David noticed how Rosa's eyes seemed to drift in and out of focus. She might have dementia or some other condition that made her confused. This made David even more concerned about sending her away. Do you have family? Someone we can call? David asked as he prepared to stitch the wound. I had a daughter once, Rosa said sadly. Maria. She was going to be a doctor. But I can't remember where she is now. David's heart broke for this lost woman. He thought about Emma and how scared he would be if something happened to her. Someone's mother was hurt and alone, and he was the only person willing to help her. David began carefully stitching Rosa's wound. He had done this procedure hundreds of times under doctor's supervision, and his hands moved with practiced skill. Rosa winced but stayed very still. You're being very brave, David told her. Just a few more stitches and you'll feel much better. You're very kind, Rosa whispered. Just like my Maria. She always wanted to help people too. David was tying off the final stitch when the supply room door opened suddenly. Supervisor Margaret Hayes stood in the doorway, her face red with anger. What exactly do you think you're doing? She demanded. David's blood turned cold. Margaret was known for following every rule exactly, and she had no patience for nurses who stepped out of line. I was just helping a patient, David said, trying to keep his voice calm. You just performed a medical procedure without doctor authorization, Margaret snapped. That woman was told to leave. You brought her into a supply closet and treated her illegally. Rosa looked frightened as Margaret's voice got louder. David placed a gentle hand on Rosa's shoulder to reassure her. She needed immediate medical attention, David explained. The wound was deep and bleeding heavily. That's not your decision to make, Margaret said coldly. You're a nurse, not a doctor. You follow orders, you don't give medical treatment without approval. David felt his job slipping away, but he didn't regret helping Rosa. She's someone's mother. She needed help. She's also uninsured and not our responsibility, Margaret replied. Pack up your things, Miller. You're terminated immediately for violating hospital policy and performing unauthorized medical procedures. The words hit David like a punch to the stomach. Terminated. Fired. No job. No income. How would he pay rent? How would he buy food for Emma? How would he explain to his daughter that her daddy lost his job for trying to help someone? Please, David said quietly. I have a daughter. This job is all I have. Margaret's expression didn't soften. You should have thought about that before you decided to play doctor. Security will escort you out. David helped Rosa to her feet. The stitches looked good and the bleeding had stopped. At least she would be okay. Thank you, Rosa said, tears in her eyes. You saved my life. I'm sorry this got you in trouble, she added, somehow understanding what had just happened. David managed a weak smile. Don't be sorry. I'd do it again. 2 security guards appeared to escort David from the building. He cleaned up the supply room, gathered his personal items from his locker, and walked through the emergency department one last time. His co-workers watched sadly but said nothing. Everyone knew Margaret's word was final. Outside in the parking garage, David sat in his car for a long time. The sun was starting to rise, and soon Emma would wake up expecting breakfast and stories about his night at work. How could he tell her that everything had changed? David drove home slowly, watching the city wake up around him. People hurried to their jobs, children waited for school buses, and life continued normally for everyone except him. 24 hours ago, he had been a working nurse with a steady income. Now he was unemployed with no prospects and a daughter depending on him. At home, David stood outside Emma's bedroom door, listening to her soft breathing. She looked so peaceful sleeping in her small bed, surrounded by stuffed animals and fairy tale books. She trusted him to take care of her, and he had let her down. David made coffee and sat at their small kitchen table, staring at the stack of bills that arrived yesterday. Rent was due in 2 weeks. Emma needed new shoes for school. The car payment was overdue. Without his nursing income, they would lose everything within a month. He thought about calling his parents, but they had made it clear years ago that they disapproved of his choice to raise Emma alone after his wife Sarah died in a car accident. They thought he should have given Emma to relatives and focused on his career. They would probably say this whole situation proved they were right. David buried his face in his hands. He had always been strong for Emma, but today he felt completely defeated. He had tried to do the right thing by helping Rosa, but the consequences were destroying everything he had worked to build. The clock on the kitchen wall ticked loudly in the quiet apartment. In a few hours, Emma would wake up and ask about his night at work. She would want breakfast and help getting dressed for school. She would expect him to be the same strong, reliable father he had always been. David straightened his shoulders and took a deep breath. Emma needed him to figure this out. He would find another job somehow. He would make sure she didn't suffer because of his choice to help Rosa. But deep in his heart, David knew that losing his nursing license would make finding work almost impossible. Hospitals talked to each other, and news of his termination would spread quickly. Who would hire a nurse who had been fired for breaking protocol? As morning light filled their small apartment, David realized that his decision to help Rosa had cost him everything. He just hoped it would turn out to be worth it. David sat at his kitchen table 24 hours after losing his job, surrounded by a mountain of unpaid bills. The morning sun streamed through their small apartment window, but it felt cold and unwelcoming. Each envelope seemed to mock him with its bright red, "Final Notice" stamp. He spread the bills across the table like a puzzle he couldn't solve. Rent due in 12 days. Electric bill overdue by 2 weeks. Car payment late. Emma's school lunch account empty. Health insurance cancelled due to job termination. The numbers swam before his tired eyes, adding up to far more money than he had in his bank account. David's phone buzzed with another call from an unknown number. He had been ignoring these calls all morning, knowing they were probably bill collectors who had somehow learned about his job loss already. His savings account showed $347. After 5 years of steady work, that was all he had managed to save while supporting Emma on his own. The apartment felt smaller today, as if the walls were closing in on him. Their home was modest but comfortable, with Emma's colorful drawings taped to the refrigerator and her ballet trophies lined up on the bookshelf. David had worked so hard to create a stable life for his daughter after losing his wife Sarah. Now it was all falling apart. Emma's bedroom door opened softly, and she appeared in her pink pajamas, rubbing sleepy eyes. Her dark hair stuck up in every direction, and she carried her favorite stuffed rabbit under one arm. "Good morning, Daddy," she said with a yawn. "Why are you up so early? Don't you usually sleep after working all night?" David quickly gathered the bills into a stack and forced a smile. "I couldn't sleep, sweetheart. How about some pancakes for breakfast?" Emma's face lit up. "With chocolate chips?" "Of course," David said, standing up and moving toward the kitchen. Cooking would give him something to do with his hands while his mind raced with worry. As David mixed pancake batter, Emma climbed onto her chair at the table. She always chattered happily in the mornings, telling him about her dreams and making plans for the day. Usually her innocent joy brightened his mood, but today each word reminded him of how much he stood to lose. Sarah's mom is taking us to the zoo tomorrow for her birthday, Emma said excitedly. Can I bring my camera to take pictures of the elephants? David's heart sank. The zoo trip would cost money he didn't have for gas and parking. Plus Emma would want to buy something from the gift shop, and he couldn't bear to tell her no. We'll see, baby, he said quietly, flipping pancakes with more force than necessary. Emma studied his face with the sharp perception that children sometimes have. Are you sad about something, Daddy? David turned around, spatula in hand, trying to think of what to say. He had always been honest with Emma, but how could he explain that they might lose their home? How could he tell an 8-year-old that her father had been fired for trying to help someone? I'm just tired, he said finally. Work was busy last night. Emma nodded seriously. Mrs. Peterson said you help sick people feel better. That must be hard sometimes. David's throat tightened. If only it were that simple. After breakfast, David walked Emma to school as usual. She skipped beside him, pointing out interesting clouds and asking questions about everything she saw. David tried to focus on her voice, but his mind kept wandering to job applications and unemployment benefits. Daddy, you're not listening, Emma said, tugging on his hand. I'm sorry, sweetheart. What did you say? I asked if we can plant flowers in our window boxes when spring comes. Mrs. Johnson at school said sunflowers grow really tall, and I want to see if they can reach our second-floor window. David looked up at their apartment building, wondering if they would still be living there when spring arrived. That sounds like a great idea, Emma. At the school gate, Emma gave David her usual goodbye hug. Have a good day sleeping, Daddy. Dream about nice things. David watched her run into the building, her backpack bouncing with each step. She was so trusting, so confident that her father would always take care of her. The weight of that responsibility felt crushing today. Back home, David spent the morning on his laptop, searching job websites and sending out resumes. Every nursing position required references from previous employers, and David knew his supervisor Margaret would not give him a positive recommendation. Some applications asked specifically about terminations or disciplinary actions. David stared at those questions for long minutes, knowing that honesty would eliminate him from consideration. His nursing license was under review by the state board. Even if he found a job, he might not be allowed to work as a nurse anymore. David had no other skills, no other training. Nursing was all he knew. By afternoon, David had applied to 15 jobs and received 3 automated rejection emails. He closed his laptop and put his head in his hands. This wasn't working. David thought about calling his parents in Ohio. They had money and could probably help with expenses until he got back on his feet. But their last conversation still stung in his memory. His father had called Emma, that child, and suggested David was ruining his life by playing single parent. His mother had wondered aloud why David didn't just find a nice woman to marry who could take care of Emma properly. They didn't understand that David didn't want to be rescued from his daughter. Emma was the best part of his life, the reason he worked so hard and tried so hard to be better. He would rather lose everything than ask his parents for help that came with judgment and conditions. The afternoon dragged by slowly. David cleaned their already clean apartment, organized Emma's toys, and started a load of laundry. He needed to stay busy or he would lose his mind worrying about their future. At 3:30, David walked to Emma's school for pickup. Other parents chatted easily about weekend plans and soccer practice. David felt like he was watching their normal lives from behind glass, no longer part of their comfortable world. Emma bounced out of school with her usual energy. Guess what happened today, Daddy? We learned about community helpers, and I told everyone my daddy is a nurse who saves people's lives. David's heart broke a little more. That's nice, sweetheart. My teacher said nurses are heroes. She said you probably work really hard to help families feel better when someone is sick. David managed a weak smile. Your teacher is very smart. That evening, David made Emma's favorite dinner of grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. They ate together at their small table while Emma told him about her friend Lucy's new puppy and her upcoming spelling test. "Daddy," Emma said suddenly. "Are we poor?" The question caught David off guard. "Why would you ask that?" "Lucy's mom was talking to another mom today, and she said some families don't have enough money for things they need. She said those families are poor. I was wondering if that's us." David set down his sandwich. "What do you think?" Emma looked around their apartment thoughtfully. "We have food and a house and warm clothes. We have each other. I think we're pretty rich." David felt tears threatening. "I think you're absolutely right." After dinner, Emma worked on homework while David pretended to read a magazine. Actually, he was calculating and recalculating their expenses, trying to figure out how to make their savings last as long as possible. At bedtime, Emma asked David to read her favorite story about a brave princess who saved her kingdom from a terrible dragon. As David read about the princess's courage and determination, he wondered where his own courage had gone. "Daddy," Emma said sleepily. "If you ever needed help with something really important, you would ask me, right?" "Of course, baby." "Why?" "Because I'm part of this family too. If there's a problem, we should solve it together." David tucked the blankets around her small shoulders. "You're very wise for 8 years old." "I get it from my daddy," Emma said with a yawn. After Emma fell asleep, David returned to the kitchen table and spread the bills out again. He had been avoiding the math, but now he forced himself to face reality. Without income, they had maybe 3 weeks before everything fell apart. David opened Emma's piggy bank sitting on the counter, a ceramic elephant she had received for her 6th birthday. He counted the coins and bills she had saved from birthdays and tooth fairy visits. $43.27. She was so proud of that money, often counting it and making plans for special purchases. The next morning brought another stack of bills in the mailbox and 2 more rejection emails. David was drinking coffee and staring at his laptop screen when Emma appeared for breakfast. "You look tired again, Daddy. Maybe you should take a nap today." "Maybe I will," David said, though he knew sleep was impossible with so much worry churning in his mind. Emma ate her cereal quietly, occasionally glancing at David with concern. Children always knew when something was wrong, even when adults tried to hide it. As David was getting ready to walk Emma to school, she disappeared into her room for a moment. She returned carrying her ceramic elephant piggy bank, holding it out to David with serious eyes. "Here, Daddy. You can have my money." David stared at the piggy bank. "Emma, that's your special savings." "I know, but you seem worried about money." "Maybe my money can help with whatever is wrong." David knelt down to Emma's eye level. Her face was earnest and determined, so much like her mother's when Sarah was trying to solve a problem. "Sweetheart, that's very generous, but I can't take your savings." "Why not?" "You always share everything with me. When I'm scared, you make me feel better. When I'm sick, you take care of me. Now you're worried about something, so I want to help you." David felt his control slipping. This 8-year-old child was offering him her most precious possession because she could see his pain. How had his life come to this moment? "Keep your money safe, Emma. Daddy will figure everything out." "Are you sure?" "Because I was saving for a new bike, but bikes aren't as important as helping family." David hugged Emma tightly, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo and trying not to cry. "I love you so much, baby girl." "I love you too, Daddy. We're going to be okay." David walked Emma to school, then returned home to face another day of job searching and bill counting. The apartment felt empty and cold without Emma's cheerful presence. Around noon, David was updating his resume for the 20th time when a firm knock echoed through the apartment. David froze. Bill collectors didn't usually come to the door, but maybe things had gotten that serious already. The knocking came again, more insistent this time. David approached the door cautiously and looked through the peephole. A well-dressed woman with dark hair stood in the hallway, holding what looked like a manila folder. David opened the door slowly, keeping the chain lock attached. "Can I help you? Are you David Miller?" "The nurse who works at City General Hospital." David's stomach dropped. "I used to work there. What do you need?" The woman's expression was serious but not unfriendly. "My name is Dr. Maria Santos. I need to ask you about a patient you treated 2 nights ago. A woman named Rosa Martinez." David's blood turned cold. This had to be a lawyer or some kind of investigator. Someone was suing him for treating Rosa without authorization. His nursing license was definitely going to be revoked now. "I think I should call my lawyer," David said quietly. Dr. Santos looked confused. "Why would you need a lawyer?" "I just want to thank you." David blinked in surprise. "Thank me? You saved my mother's life." The words hit David like lightning. "Your mother?" "Rosa Martinez is my mother. She has dementia and wandered away from her care facility 3 days ago. We've been searching for her desperately. She's been missing for 3 years." David slowly removed the chain lock and opened the door fully. Dr. Santos stepped inside, and David could see tears in her eyes. "I need to tell you what your kindness has meant to our family," she said. "And I think I have something that might interest you." David stared at Dr. Maria Santos, trying to process what she had just told him. Rosa Martinez, the confused woman he had helped 2 nights ago, was this doctor's missing mother. The woman whose treatment had cost him his job was standing in front of him, and her daughter wanted to thank him. "Please, sit down," David said, gesturing toward his small couch. "I'm still trying to understand. Rosa has been missing for 3 years. Dr. Santos settled into the chair across from David, clutching her manila folder tightly. Her professional appearance couldn't hide the exhaustion in her eyes, the look of someone who had been searching and worrying for a very long time. "My mother was diagnosed with dementia 4 years ago," Dr. Santos began. "At first, it was mild. She would forget names or repeat stories. But it got worse quickly. She started wandering away from home, getting lost in our neighborhood." David listened carefully, thinking about Rosa's confused expression and her difficulty remembering details about her life. 3 years ago, we made the difficult decision to move her to a specialized care facility. It was a beautiful place with trained staff and secure areas to keep patients safe. Mom seemed to be adjusting well. Dr. Santos paused, taking a shaky breath. "One morning, the staff called to tell us Mom was gone. Somehow she had slipped past security during a shift change. We searched everywhere. Police, private investigators, missing person reports. It was like she had vanished completely." David felt a chill run down his spine. "That must have been terrible for your family." "We never stopped looking. I hired the best investigators, put up flyers all over the city, checked every hospital and shelter regularly. My brothers wanted me to give up after the first year, but I couldn't. She's my mother." David thought about Emma and how desperate he would be if she ever went missing. "I can't imagine going through that." 2 days ago, everything changed, Dr. Santos continued. "I volunteer at a free clinic downtown on weekends. A woman came in with an infected wound on her arm. She was confused and couldn't remember much, but she kept talking about a kind nurse named David who had helped her." David's heart began to race. "Rosa's stitches got infected?" "Yes, but not badly. The infection was treatable with antibiotics. What mattered was that she remembered you. She said you were gentle and kind, that you helped her when no one else would. She remembered your name and that you worked at City General Hospital." Dr. Santos opened her manila folder and pulled out a photograph. "Is this the woman you treated?" David looked at the picture and nodded immediately. It showed Rosa in better times, smiling at the camera with bright, alert eyes. She was standing next to a young woman in a graduation cap and gown. That's Rosa. And that's you at your medical school graduation? Yes. Mom was so proud when I became a doctor. She always said I should help people who couldn't help themselves. David felt emotion building in his chest. Rosa mentioned having a daughter who wanted to be a doctor. She said her name was Maria. Even with dementia, she remembered me, Dr. Santos said softly. But more importantly, she remembered your kindness. When I heard her story, I knew I had to find you. How is Rosa now? David asked. She's back in care, getting proper treatment. Her physical health is surprisingly good considering she lived on the streets for 3 years. She's confused and scared sometimes, but she's safe. And it's all because you took the time to help her when she needed it most. David shook his head. I just did what any nurse would do. No, Dr. Santos said firmly. According to my mother, the hospital was sending her away. She was hurt and bleeding, and they told her to leave. You risked your job to help a stranger who couldn't pay for treatment. David felt his face grow hot with shame. Actually, I lost my job. I was fired for treating Rosa without authorization. Dr. Santos stared at him in shock. They fired you for helping my mother? Hospital policy. I performed a medical procedure without doctor's orders. My supervisor terminated me immediately. That's horrible, Dr. Santos said. You saved my mother's life, and they punished you for it. David stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the street below. I have a daughter to support. I shouldn't have risked my job, but I couldn't just let Rosa leave while she was hurt. What will you do now? David turned back to face Dr. Santos. I'm looking for work, but it's difficult. My nursing license is under review, and other hospitals don't want to hire someone who was terminated. Dr. Santos was quiet for a long moment, studying David's face. What if I told you I had a job offer for you? What kind of job offer? I need to explain something about my family first, Dr. Santos said. My father was a successful businessman who believed in giving back to the community. When he passed away 5 years ago, he left me a substantial inheritance with one condition. I had to use the money to help underserved populations get medical care. David sat back down, curious about where this was leading. I used the inheritance to open a chain of community health clinics throughout the city. We provide medical care to people regardless of their ability to pay. Homeless individuals, undocumented workers, families who can't afford insurance. People like my mother. That sounds like important work, David said. It is, but it's also challenging. I need medical staff who understand our mission, people who care more about helping patients than following bureaucratic rules. People like you. David felt a spark of hope but tried not to get too excited. What exactly are you offering? I want you to be the head nurse at my main clinic. You would oversee nursing staff, develop patient care protocols, and work directly with our most vulnerable patients. The salary is twice what you made at City General, plus full health benefits and a retirement plan. David's mind raced. Twice his hospital's salary would solve all their financial problems immediately. But it seemed too good to be true. Why would you offer this to me? You don't know anything about my qualifications. I know you put patient care above personal safety. I know you have compassion for people who are suffering. Those are the qualifications that matter most in our clinics. Dr. Santos reached into her folder again and pulled out a formal job offer letter. The position includes professional development opportunities, conference attendance, and tuition assistance if you want to pursue advanced nursing degrees. David stared at the letter, afraid to touch it in case this was all a dream. What about my nursing license review? I have connections at the state licensing board. What you did was medically sound and ethically correct. I'll make sure they understand the circumstances. I don't know what to say, David whispered. Say you'll consider it. Take the weekend to think about it. I know this is a big change. David thought about Emma offering him her piggy bank money that morning. He thought about the stack of unpaid bills on his kitchen table. He thought about Rosa's grateful smile when he finished stitching her wound. "I don't need the weekend," David said. "Yes. Yes, I accept your offer." Dr. Santos smiled for the first time since entering David's apartment. "Wonderful. There's one more thing I want to discuss." She pulled out another document from her folder. "My clinic also runs a scholarship program for children of employees. Emma would qualify for full educational support through college, including tutoring, summer programs, and extracurricular activities." David felt tears building behind his eyes. "You investigated my family? I wanted to understand what kind of person would risk everything to help a stranger. I learned about your wife's death, about how you've raised Emma alone while working full-time. You're exactly the kind of person our clinic needs." David stood up and walked to Emma's school photo on the bookshelf. In the picture, she was grinning widely, missing 2 front teeth and wearing a bright blue dress. "She's the most important thing in my life," David said. "Everything I do is for her. I can see that. Emma will have opportunities through our scholarship program that most children can only dream of. Art classes, science camps, travel programs. Whatever interests her." David turned back to Dr. Santos. "How can I ever thank you? You already have. You saved my mother when no one else would. This is just my way of saying thank you." They talked for another hour about the clinic's mission, David's responsibilities, and the start date. Dr. Santos explained that the clinic served over 5,000 patients each year, many of whom had nowhere else to turn for medical care. "We're not just treating medical conditions," she said. "We're treating poverty, homelessness, fear, and desperation. It's challenging work, but it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done." When Dr. Santos left, David sat alone in his apartment, holding the job offer letter. 24 hours ago, he was unemployed with no prospects and mounting debt. Now he had a job that paid double his previous salary, working for someone who shared his values about patient care. David looked at the clock and realized Emma would be home from school soon. He quickly gathered up all the bills from the kitchen table and put them away. There would be plenty of time to pay them now. When Emma burst through the door at 3:45, David was waiting with a huge smile. "Daddy, you look different," she said immediately. "Happy different. I have some good news, sweetheart. Daddy got a new job." Emma dropped her backpack and clapped her hands. "Really? Where?" "At a clinic that helps people who don't have much money. I'll be helping patients just like at the hospital, but these people really need our help." "Will you be home more?" Emma asked hopefully. "Yes. I'll work during the day while you're at school, and I'll be home every evening and weekend." Emma threw her arms around David's waist. "This is the best news ever." That evening, David made Emma's favorite dinner and told her more about his new job. He explained how sometimes people got sick but couldn't afford to see a doctor, and how the clinic made sure everyone got the help they needed. "It sounds like you're going to be a superhero nurse," Emma said seriously. "Why do you say that?" "Because superheroes help people who can't help themselves. That's exactly what you're going to do." 6 months later, David stood in the garden behind their new home, watching Emma plant sunflower seeds in neat rows. They had moved to a house with a yard after David's first performance review at the clinic resulted in another salary increase. "These are going to grow taller than me," Emma said proudly, patting soil over the seeds. "Maybe taller than both of us," David replied. A car pulled into their driveway, and David smiled as he recognized the visitors. Dr. Santos got out of the driver's side and walked around to help Rosa out of the passenger seat. Rosa moved slowly but steadily, wearing a bright yellow dress and a wide hat to protect her from the sun. Her dementia had progressed, but she still had good days when her mind was clear and alert. "David," Rosa called out, her face lighting up with recognition. "Look at this beautiful garden." Emma ran over to hug Rosa gently. Over the past few months, Rosa had become like a grandmother to Emma. They spent Sunday afternoons together, with Rosa telling stories about her childhood in Mexico while Emma showed her drawings and school projects. "Rosa, I planted sunflowers just like you taught me," Emma said excitedly. "Dr. Santos said you used to grow the biggest sunflowers in your neighborhood." Rosa nodded slowly. "My grandmother taught me that sunflowers always turn toward the light, no matter how dark things get around them." David felt the truth of those words deeply. His decision to help Rosa in that hospital supply room had seemed like the end of everything good in his life. Instead, it had turned out to be the beginning of something much better. Dr. Santos joined them in the garden, carrying a picnic basket. "I brought lunch." Rosa wanted to see how the tomatoes were growing. As they spread a blanket under the apple tree, David reflected on how much had changed. His work at the clinic was challenging but fulfilling. Every day he helped people who reminded him why he became a nurse in the first place. Emma was thriving with the additional educational opportunities, taking art classes and joining the science club at school. "Daddy," Emma said as they sat down to eat. "Remember when I offered you my piggy bank money?" "I remember. I'm glad you didn't take it, because now I have enough saved to buy Rosa a birthday present next month." Rosa reached over and took Emma's hand. "You are the best present I could ever have, little one." David watched his daughter and Rosa together, two people who might never have met if he hadn't decided to help a bleeding stranger in a hospital supply room. Sometimes the hardest decisions led to the most beautiful outcomes. As the afternoon sun warmed their faces and Emma chattered about her plans for the garden, David understood that losing his job had been the best thing that ever happened to him. It had led him to work that mattered, to financial security, and to an extended family that filled their lives with love. Rosa was right about sunflowers. No matter how dark things seemed, there was always light to be found if you knew where to look for it.